Welcome to the Norma Seder project. In these videos, I am discussing end times prophecy, what was fulfilled in the past, and what still remains future. In the first video, I showed how the abomination that would be standing in the holy place would take place in Herod's temple and not a future temple. And this already took place in 70 AD. In this video, I will be discussing the 70 weeks prophecy of Daniel 9. I hope to show that it is not an antichrist making a 7-year peace agreement with Israel during the 70th week. So, this prophecy begins with Daniel, who has now understood the prophecy of Jeremiah concerning the captivity of the Jews in Babylon. The 70 years is up. Cyrus conquered Babylon, and Daniel begins to plead with the Lord concerning all Israel, the holy city, and the holy mount. The story goes that the Jews were not to plant their fields in the 7th year according to God's law. So every 6th year they were to plant enough crops for that year and also the 7th year, and leave the land fallow during the 7th year. This was to let the land replenish itself, but people being people, they did not do this. So God counted only the 7th year of every 7-year period of time against them for 490 years, which added up to 70 years that they would go into exile. Now in the prophecy of Daniel 9, it's kind of reversed. Each week is worth 7 years, not 7 days. There are 70 weeks, so 7 times 70 equals 490 years. So Daniel 9:24. 70 weeks have been decreed for your people and your holy city to finish the transgression, to make an end of sin, to make atonement for iniquity, to bring in everlasting righteousness, to seal up vision and prophecy, and to anoint the most holy. Daniel must have been wondering how this would ever be possible. But we understand how this could have been accomplished. If the nation had accepted Jesus as their Messiah, then all these things would have been put into reality for them. But these things can only be accomplished through Jesus and not by mere men. This is what brings about the theory that the 70th week is still future. Many Christians believe because the Jews did not accept Messiah, that the entire last week, the 70th week, or 7 years, will take place just before Christ returns to set up his 1,000-year kingdom on earth. But calendars don't stop, and it didn't stop for the Jews. They were appointed 490 continuous years, and at the end of that time, the Jewish nation would then become last, and the believers, both Jews and Gentiles, those that do accept Jesus as Messiah, will be first. After the harvest of all the believers is brought in, which people call the rapture, then once again will God deal with the Jewish nation, and he will return and set up the 1,000-year earthly kingdom. The only thing the Lord ever said to me about this particular prophecy was, let Scripture interpret Scripture. That sounds like an easy thing to do, but it wasn't for me. I had that Antichrist theory still stuck in my head. As we study about all these prophecies about end times, we build ourselves a big picture of what we think is going to happen. It is like blocks, and we start building until it becomes very tall. Prophecies like Daniel's 70 weeks are usually lower blocks, and when we pull it out, everything begins to fall, and we kind of have to start over, and that's very unsettling. Okay, so Daniel 9:25. So you are to know and discern that from the issuing of a decree to restore, the word restore here means to return to, and rebuild Jerusalem until Messiah the Prince, there will be 7 weeks and 62 weeks. It will be built again with plaza and moat, even in times of distress. So, which decree? Cyrus issued the first decree, but that was just to rebuild the temple only, and the people who did that, most of them lived, or probably all of them lived outside the city, because the city was in ruin. The decree actually took place too early to be the one that is being spoken of here. Many years later, a decree was issued to Ezra, allowing that he bring the law back to Jerusalem and restore the government. He was to appoint magistrates and judges to administer justice to the people of Jerusalem. This would require the rebuilding of Jerusalem, possibly by the many hundreds of people that Ezra brought with him, who would need homes. Also, it says in Nehemiah 1:3, around 10 years later, that the Jews that had survived the exile had returned to Jerusalem, and they were in great distress because the city wall was broken down. A city without a wall isn't safe. So by this time we can see that they were already rebuilding and living in Jerusalem, or they wouldn't have needed a wall for protection. Now, Nehemiah rebuilt the city wall, but not the city. So altogether, I would think that the decree to restore Jerusalem was one given to Ezra in 457 BC. Restoring the laws of God and the government in Jerusalem is the first step to rebuilding the city. Okay, so from the decree was issued until Messiah the Prince, there will be 7 weeks and 62 sevens. 7 and 62 equals 69. In this prophecy, Daniel is being told when the Messiah, the Anointed One, would appear at the end of the 69th week, which is 483 years from the time the decree was issued. So I did a chart starting with 457, 456 BC, and continued until the end of the 483 years. And it takes us right to 2627 in the baptism of Jesus. That would be when he was anointed and began his ministry. The other thing that's interesting about this is the Lord sets aside the first 7 weeks, and 7 weeks is the amount of time till the first Jubilee. Every 50th year there was a Jubilee, and so another way of being able to count this is that there will be 10 Jubilees in 490 years. I'm sure it wasn't easy for all those generations to keep track of time. Not everybody had a calendar, but everybody knew when the Jubilee was going to take place in Israel. Okay, so these years can be counted according to a Jewish calendar or by our calendar. It doesn't matter which one, because the same amount of days will have passed over 483 years. And this is because of the leap month in the Jewish calendar, that every 3 years they have a second month of Adar. And at the end of every 19-year cycle, both calendars will show that the same amount of days has passed during that cycle. There's also no need for a 360-day prophetic calendar, if you've heard of that, which was just one man's theory. The Jews never had a calendar like that, and they wouldn't have been able to count those years until the coming of Messiah. So, Daniel 9:26. Then after the 62 weeks, the Messiah will be cut off and have nothing. Interesting that the Hebrew word here for cut off is a word associated with sacrifices. This is, of course, speaking of the sacrifice that Jesus will make for mankind. His death and resurrection took place 3.5 years after his baptism, meaning that it happened in the midst of the 70th week. If these things are happening to Jesus during the 70th week, doesn't it stand to reason that he is the one being talked about that will make a covenant? And the people of the prince who is to come will destroy the city and the sanctuary, and it will come with a flood, even to the end there will be war, desolations are determined. The army of Titus destroyed the city and temple in 70 AD, of course. Now, even though man has free will, and what he does determines how things will go, God is able to see the past, the present, and the future. He knew ahead of time that the Jewish people as a nation would not accept this gift he was offering in the form of a Messiah and his saving grace. So naturally we find the punishment for not accepting the Messiah within the 490 years is going to be talked about in the prophecy. But Jesus also prophesied concerning this coming destruction in Luke 19:41. When he approached Jerusalem, he saw the city and wept over it, saying, "If you had known in this day, even you, the things which make for peace, but now they have been hidden from your eyes. For the days will come upon you when your enemies will throw up a barricade against you and surround you and hem you in on every side. And they will level you to the ground and your children within you, and they will not leave you one stone upon another, because you did not recognize the day of your visitation." So they did not accept their Messiah within the 490 years that they had been appointed to do this. So after the 490 years are over, still within the generation, their punishment would come upon them. So did that sink in? If the 490 years was not accomplished, if they had not accomplished it within the 490 years, then the punishment for it would not have happened. But it did, meaning the 490 years ended, and the 70th week is not being held over to begin again in end times. It's like if you gave your child an hour to complete a job, you're going to wait the entire hour. And if they have not done it, then you're going to punish. But you aren't going to go in 10 minutes early and say, "You didn't get the job done, go stand in the corner." So God doesn't do that either. God is fair God. He is giving them the full time that he has allowed for this to take place. Okay. Remember it said, then after the 62 weeks, the Messiah will be cut off. So Jesus would be cut off after the 7 and 62 weeks. So after the 69th week was complete, which means he's cut off during the 70th week. So let's look at what would take place during the 70th week. Daniel 9:27. And he will make a firm covenant with the many for 1 week, but in the middle of the week he will put a stop to sacrifice and grain offering. Remember that this is only speaking of 70 weeks given to the Jewish nation. The restriction of 1 week is only for them. They only have 7 years or 1 week after Messiah comes on the scene to accept him as their Messiah and the new covenant that he brings in. But, Jesus' covenant is forever for all that will not, both Jews and Gentiles. When the 490 years were complete, then what happened at that time is Paul was sent out to the Gentiles to bring the gospel to the nations. Okay, in this scripture here it says, he will confirm, which means to give strength, with the many, also can be translated as with a multitude or to a multitude. And that's exactly what Jesus did during the first half of this week before he was cut off. He was teaching about or giving strength to the new covenant that was being offered. So when he was hung on the cross, 3.5 years after his baptism, it would have been in the middle of the week, and he became the last sacrifice. This means he caused the sacrifices being made in the temple to cease, in that they were no longer accepted by God. Doesn't matter if they continued another 40 years, they had ceased in reverence to God, had become a stink unto his nostrils. Okay, so to kind of summarize this, to me this is letting Scripture interpret Scripture. It would be 69 weeks until Messiah. This Messiah would be cut off after the 69th week, which means during the 70th week at the midpoint. Messiah would cause the sacrifices to cease, doing so by becoming the last sacrifice. This prophecy was about the coming of the Messiah and what he would do when he got here, and not about some future Antichrist. Okay, the prophecy goes on to say, and on the wing of an abominations will come one who makes desolate even until a complete destruction. One that is decreed is poured out on the one who makes desolate. This is talking about what is going to take place because the Jewish nation did not accept their Messiah. It is referring back to the last verse and the total destruction of Jerusalem and the temple. So for these reasons, I am not expecting this type of Antichrist to appear, one that would make a 7-year agreement, but I am expecting a leader of the Beast of Revelations to emerge. He'll be the leader of the 8th head on the beast, and a head represents an empire. This will be an aggressive empire with a twofold goal: to rule the world and to destroy both Christians and Jews in the process. So thank you for listening, and God bless.